This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, we welcome you to Coffee with NAHRA. My name is Janet Borland. I'm the Association Director for the National Native American Human Resources Association. For those joining us for the first time, NAHRA is a tribal-led nonprofit organization focused on the HR profession and tribal leadership. We are committed to members every day of the year as we truly understand human resources and leadership. Historically, the NAHRA Association started as grassroots efforts with four tribes meeting to network and share personal challenges and solutions. The meetings over the years evolved into conferences, and soon the membership grew into a formal Northwest and then a national association. We are now proudly in our 27 years of existing, continuing to advance and advocate for Native American tribes. For more information on resources, including certification programs, webinars, annual conferences, summits, and valuable resources for you and your HR team, visit us at www.nnahra.org. We will host a mental health awareness summit this coming May 11th and 12th at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas. Info for registration is on our NAHRA website. Today, we proudly present our NAHRA partner, Max Muller, talking to us why are they leaving? Why aren't they working? This fast paced information and guidance rich 45-minute with NAHRA webinar real world practical guidance on how to determine the root causes of why workers might or leaving you and why some workers do so little that you're focused to hire more people and get work done. How to employ best practices in recruiting, screening, interviewing, and onboarding to make you an employer of choice. How to employ HR metrics, including dashboards and scorecards. How would you use Pulse and employee lifecycle surveys? How can you implement low cost but effective measures to keep employees loyal to your organization? We're so excited to have Max talk to us and give us some pointers on how to be successful. With that being said, Max, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Janet. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Let me add my welcome to our program today. Excuse me. As Janet indicated, we're going to be talking about why are they leaving, why aren't they working? And in other words, really, it's all about the idea of quiet quitting. All of us know, if you've been in HR for any period of time, and even if you're not in HR, if you have responsibility in terms of recruiting and onboarding and so on and so forth, you know how difficult it is now that the end of the pandemic has come to recruit people, to onboard them, to keep them busy, etc. With a lot of the workforce generally, and I'm speaking not just in Indian country, but generally, that people have drifted off into things they can work on from home. They've just left the job market altogether, etc. So one aspect of this is the idea that if we can retain workers, then obviously we're miles ahead of the game. In addition, there's another phenomenon. It's the idea of quiet quitting. And what is that? Well, basically, it's where an employee does just enough to get by. In other words, they're essentially disengaged. They show up, they do the bare minimum. All too often, they're kind of on the borderline of actually being fired or disciplined severely, performance improvement plans, all of those sorts of things. And so what we want to talk about today is really the whole idea of how do we not only recruit well and onboard, but let that actually be our starting point for retention, for engagement. I think it really truly begins even before you hire someone. And for those of you that already have employees of a long standing, we will address the idea how to basically reinvigorate them as we go along. And I believe that history has shown that really there's a set of best practices in terms of creating engagement and really loyalty, if you will, to the organization and to a particular job, et cetera, if you follow best practices. The first best practice is the idea of defining KSAO for a particular job. KSAO, and I'm sure many of you already know this, but that stands for knowledge, for skills, for aptitude, and sometimes that's also interpreted as being, attitude. I want to go with aptitude, which is the idea of how easily does someone intake new information and make it useful, make it something they can actually, they picked up a new skill set. And then the last thing, the O, basically are other important characteristics. So if you really want to engage people, you want to, keep them around and what have you, I believe that an organization has to impose a discipline on itself to actually define for each job and even each subdivision of a job in terms of various, functions and what have you, the CASOs, all right? Knowledge, skills, aptitude, and other characteristics that you need for that job. You know how to do that by yourself? Probably not. Who do you need to help you? Your managers, your supervisors. For any of you that have spent any time at all in HR, you already know that one of the most horrible statements that all of us hear is, that's your problem. I'm not in HR, you are. That's an HR problem. No, 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 no. In terms of creating loyalty, engagement, loyalty leading to retention, the supervisors have to help you. You don't know what's going on a daily basis, inside of of a specific department, the nuances of the workload, how it might change or evolve and morph in the fullness of time. And so once a year, you need to review your job descriptions. If you don't have job descriptions for a particular job, honestly, I would make that a priority. I really would right away. I'd make that a priority for yourself. But engage the managers. Tell them you need their help. Now, in addition to that, you need to have what are the measurements, what metrics are you going to use to actually measure performance. So along with defining the knowledge required, the skill sets that are required, the aptitude and the other characteristics, we also have to know what the KPIs are for a particular job. How can a manager actually, give somebody a performance evaluation or even rate them and analyze what's going on with them on a daily basis if the manager himself or herself haven't put themselves through the self-discipline of determining, what do I expect of someone in this particular job? What's the benchmark for acceptable performance? Not rock star performance. There's going to be rock stars, and there's also going to be, less than rock stars. Marginal workers in any environment. But the reality is, what I'm talking about are the vast majority of workers who do an okay job. They do their job exactly what we want them to do. They do it steadily. They do it persistently. Do it consistently, etc. Well, once again, if no one has measured that, then how on earth do you even know who you are recruiting? How do you know that you're actually selecting the best person for the job when, in fact, and I know I'm sounding a little accusatory here, but I'm really sort of aiming this in general at the managers as well as anyone in HR. If you haven't put yourself through this discipline, have not engaged the managers, then really you're not gonna be able to retain people. You're not gonna be able to engage people because you don't have the tools yet. All right, update the job descriptions on an annual basis. Now, if you can, hire from within the tribe. You know, I've been doing work in Indian country, consulting and some legal work in Indian country for many, many years. And one of the things that's obvious to me is that given the size of many reservations, the it's very hard to get people to a workplace. There are all these transportation issues, things like that. There's also a limited population if in fact you're giving preference to members of your own tribe or community, by whatever designation you're at, a band, tribe, whatever. I'm going to use the word tribe, rather than trying to say a rancheria, a tribe, a community, and other designations, a village. I'm just going to say tribe as just sort of a collective thing. So the thing is, if you're trying to hire as much as you can to have full employment within the tribe itself, that's kind of a limited population. All right. Now, because there is a federal census just a while back, do you know you have a lot of information available to you? And one of my clients, what they did is when they were in fact having trouble finding people to staff the casinos again and their restaurants again after the pandemic had let up a little bit and they wanted to reopen for business, what they did is they looked at the demographics of their own population, and from that they determined who was of working age, because now you've got all the information about the various family groups and what have you. And so they saw who are in age groups that would be what we all would normally sort of understand to be working years. They then did surveys, reached out to determine who didn't have a job but who wanted a job. In other words, they didn't wait for people to come to them. They went out to find people, members of their own tribe. And so right off the bat, if I was 19-year-old, 20-year-old, what have you, and I'm just coming into the workforce, or I'm someone who's been unemployed, and it's been really tough making ends meet, and I have children, I have loved ones, and what have you. If my own tribe reaches out to me with a helping hand, they say, Max, we will help you, we will train you, we'll bring you on board. And for again, if transportation is a tough thing, if there's broadband, and I know, some of these things about no internet available to some portions of a reservation, what have you, if there's ways to overcome it so that someone can in fact do be gainfully employed and help you out with your various enterprises, but do it remotely over the internet, basically work from home, then if you approached me with a helping hand, you know I think I'd be loyal to you. I don't think I'd leave you, even if I picked up a skill set that was transferable outside of Indian country, and even if I could make a little more money, I don't think I'd do it. I think that because you reached out to me, I would stay loyal. Then, of course, you need to advertise, externally to the tribe as well. Now you're ready for screening, and this leads me back to the beginning. How do you know how to screen resumes, applications, etc.? Not only looking for skill sets that someone immediately has, but who is trainable, who has some sort of background where the knowledge they have, the skills they have, the aptitude they have to learn new things and what have you are transferable to the jobs that you're having trouble filling or retaining people in. So again, are they ready or are they trainable? So expand, I guess, your horizon in terms of your screening practices. Then everyone, do performance-based interviewing. Don't ask generic questions that don't give you any real information. Behavior-based or performance-based interviewing is where you ask questions of someone that elicits information about how they have handled situations similar to the situations they'll be handling for you. So rather than say, tell me about yourself, all right, and generally it's like, I understand that in your last job, and then whatever it is, uh, give me an overview of what you did there. So now you're having them actually discuss specifics. Then have an ongoing record of problem areas. Tell me about a time when you, and then whatever the follow-up is. Performance-based questions often begin with, tell me about a time when you, describe for me how you did this. You know, you don't want to talk about hypotheticals. You want to ask about things they actually did. All right. Now, again, some people they're young in their career or they haven't worked for a long time. It'd be different. There we have to look at, are they trainable, and you would change the question set. But for anyone who's been out there in the working world, they have a background, etc. Ask them about it. Now, for people who are just entering the workforce, ask them about questions that are the same sort of question, but it goes to their own personal history. All right. Tell me about a time that like, let's say here's a generic or a more generalized question. Describe for me a time when one of your coworkers let you down. Now, if someone's young in their career, obviously you would change that. Tell me about a time when someone let you down. How did you handle it? What was your reaction? Those sorts of things. So performance-based interviewing. Then you need to have an onboarding plan at your organization. All too often, people just bring somebody in. They say the coffee pot's over there and the restroom's over there. Good luck. That's about the extent of any real onboarding that they do. Shouldn't be that way. You should make the paperwork as easy as possible to figure out. Have someone ready to give them guidance if it's not you yourself in filling out, the I-9 form, the W-2, W-4 forms, whatever it happens to be. Have a reference for them. For those of you that have a more robust internet system, where hopefully you have a human resources, system, an enterprise type system, do have employee and new hire portals, self-service portals, where they can go and get answers, where it's question and answer sets, and basically instruction sets of how to fill out various documents. Also, I would urge you, in early days of someone being aboard, have them have a buddy, so to speak, within their own work unit, who's going to kind of watch out for them during the first 30 days, 60 days, etc., that will help them, give them guidance. So I really would urge you, if you don't already have a quote unquote buddy system, introduce it. And then your managers have to give timely feedback. It's the most terrible thing in the world where someone runs into a disciplinary situation unexpectedly, where you actually, well, we're going to have to let you go. And all along they've thought they've been doing fine, but they never received timely feedback. Now, is that going to keep somebody loyal to you? No. But if a problem shows itself, manifests itself, a manager who thoughtfully, carefully listens, asks about it, talks about it, tries to find a way to help that individual, that's how you're going to build. I'm so sorry, Janet. Janet, I don't know how I've been muted. I didn't realize that. How long have I been muted?
Not that long. I would just go back, right, like maybe a couple of sentences before. It wasn't that long at all.
Will you be able to cut that out?
Unfortunately, I can't. But I
Oh,
would, yeah,
I'm
I
so
would.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Hey, technical, everybody, we all know. So I would just go back like two sentences.
All right. Let me give a lead in. Everyone, I'm sorry we had some technical difficulties. I was accidentally muted. So let me, pick back up where I was. I was talking in the previous slide, I was talking about the necessity of actually having timely feedback from your managers so that on an ongoing basis, if they're actually giving good guidance, they're actually listening to whoever their direct reports are and handling problems on an ongoing basis, that builds loyalty, that builds engagement. Now, you can tell if someone is becoming disengaged. Their attendance starts to suffer, their work product declines in terms of both quality and in terms of quality. You begin to see, them withdrawing even from their coworkers and things like that. Now, that is someone who's partially disengaged. You know when someone is totally disengaged when they're actually becoming aggressive in terms of saying bad things about the managers, about the tribe itself, tribal government. They endlessly talk about they want more money, it's not worth it, so on and so forth. Then you have someone who's really pretty much got one foot out the door. So what we want to do is we want to re-engage them. Now, that means we have to understand what is going on in their head, both in the workplace and in their own home life. Now, outside of Indian country, things are a little bit more, cold-blooded in terms of, I don't want to hear about your personal issues, not interested in them. In fact, legally, I'm not even going to ask you about it because I don't want you to say that I've discriminated against you based on race, religion, age, sex, physical disability, because your hair is purple. I don't even want to talk to you about it. So really, outside of Indian country, frankly, there isn't as much caring. There isn't as much, I don't know, a mutuality of respect, a sense of community as there is in Indian country. So to that end, we want to think about the fact that they might be having a problem in terms of work-life balance. Now, it is unrealistic to believe that there can be some sort of a 50-50, split between, home life and work life and all of that. But if one or the other, excuse me, is out of whack, then if we can define the problem, then we can handle it. I'm sure that most of us have heard, the old saying, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. And a famous inventor by the name of Charles Kettering and a businessman, he came up with that, and it's very true, that if you define the problem, all right, if you recognize you have the problem, then you can actually do something about it. And problems come in all sorts of challenges. There are the personal life challenges, and I've already mentioned transportation. And everyone, honestly, I had a client where transportation was an issue, and they wanted to engage more of their tribal members at work. And so, for some people that lived kind of in the far-flung areas of the reservation, they only worked 2 or 3 days a week, but they set up basically, I'm going to call it a bus service, where they would go and actually pick people up, bring them to wherever the main workplace was. They did provide lodging. This my particular client had a hotel, and so they reserved a number of rooms that they actually used in the hotel for these people. And so there was on a rotating schedule, etc. And so they overcame the transportation problem that way. Another tribe simply was able to get a federal grant. They expanded their broadband, and so now they were able to employ people to work from home, whereas before it had to be on site at a, quote unquote, headquarters building, or let's put it this way, a defined set work site. All right. Mental health challenges such as anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. As strongly as I can say this without being melodramatic, most tribes, not all, I recognize not all, most tribes are able to outreach to some sort of help, whether they have their own mental health clinic, whether they have, a hospital or a clinic of some type run by the BIA, I'm sorry, the Indian Health Service rather, but managers need to know what resources are available, and they need to make those resources available to any of their direct reports where it's determined that they are having these problems at home. Again, by outstretching a hand, a manager can create loyalty. Now, we don't want to interfere in people's lives. You know, their private lives are their private lives. And so I'm not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that managers basically stick their nose where you know it's not wanted. But by the same token, if some of these things show up, managers should be ready right away to offer resources to the direct report. The whole issue of domestic violence, we all know about it. This is the wrong setting to talk about it, so I'm just going to pass it on by. Divorce, by the way, I'm not trying to minimize. I mean, it's very real, and it could very well be that you are, in fact, going to have to make some accommodations, flex time, get your you know, community involved, whatever the resources are there that handles things like the domestic violence, divorce, and all that. On the financial struggles, I want to tell you about a program that my own organization now offers. Um, we put together a personal finance program. It's a workshop, and it basically, and the tribe paid for this. They did it with a grant money and all that. But they hired my organization to come and do personal financial training for everyone. Now, it happened to be a casino, all right? It wasn't the whole tribe, but the casino employs over 350 people. And so we trained 350 people, as 3 different sessions on how to handle it. And the problem is that people who've never been given any guidance on how to set a budget, et cetera, they'll go out and they'll you know, buy a new truck, let's say, and they figure, I've got enough money coming in monthly, I can make these monthly payments. But what they didn't think about is, you know, 2 of their cousins live there with them. They brought their grandparents in to live with them. So one of their friends needs a loan, etc. And so things just slip away. And in my experience, you know, in the years that I've been doing things in Indian country, that really personal financial knowledge will help. It won't eliminate financial struggles. It won't, but it can certainly mitigate them and alleviate some of the suffering. Drugs and alcohol, another, you know, major issue, and so forth. So everyone, the whole issue here is what resources are available to help people with this at your tribe, and your managers need to be ready to send people that way to guide them in that direction. Now, in terms of work-related causes, now we're going to get kind of on touchy ground because we need to survey people. We need to ask them, why are you unhappy here? Now, what manager wants to ask someone, do you like me, my direct report? Because they're afraid the answer might be no, or they're not going to believe that someone will be honest with them. So we do need to survey, but we need our managers to help us with the survey questions so that they are more accepting of the survey responses, even if those responses are negative. And so how would you do that? Let's say that we have a survey question in terms of, you know, by the way, survey questions often are a statement that someone's supposed to respond to. So a survey question might be, I feel valued in my job. Now, the responses could be a range of things. It could be a scale of 1 to 5. It could be everything from, uh, you know, you know, agree. Yeah, I'm sorry. Uh, you know, totally agree, neutral, disagree, slightly disagree, totally disagree, you know, all of this whole range of things that in fact could be asked. If you see that they're totally satisfied, all right, that's great. But if they're saying that they don't feel valued, then another set of questions might be that, you know, do you feel that your job allows you to live up to your full potential? And again, you know, totally agree, slightly disagree, you know, a whole range of things. That's how we can find out what's going on. Feeling that their workload's unfair or excessive, all right? Feeling that their contributions to their team aren't recognized or valued, Once again, if you recognize that these problems are there, where someone feels the workload is unfair or excessive, then you can do something about it. Let me give you an example from another one of my clients. This was a client I had some time ago. It was a research facility, and at the research facility, they use laboratory rats, a certain type of rat that again that they use for science. So they had hundreds of these things, and they were housed. The cages were in different sized rooms. Well, if there's different sized rooms, then there's a different number of cages per room. Well, for whatever reason, once upon a time in dim history that nobody even is lost in the mists of time, they decided that they were going to look at productivity based on the number of rooms that someone completed as far as caring for the animals, changing it out, feeding them, all of those sorts of things. And it was totally unrealistic because people that had larger rooms, of course, had more cages, and they couldn't even get their work done in an 8-hour day, and they were always being chided by their supervisors. Do you need to work harder? You're not living up to your potential. Why should I give you more responsibility? You can't handle what you have now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I got them to do a time and motion study on the average amount of time it took to service a cage. Then, yes, I convinced them to then figure out their staffing levels based on the number of cages that could reasonably be taken care of during an 8-hour shift. And we all know 8 hours doesn't really mean 8 hours of true touch time labor, because it's really lesser. You have to walk around, you have to go to the restroom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So most people are not actually working, quote, 8 hours. So again, the staffing levels were set based on reality rather than just sort of a reaction and what have you. So once again, surveying is the way to find these things out. And so as to not actually, I don't know, have the managers be resentful when things are, the answers come back not to their liking. They're going to be more accepting of it if they themselves helped you develop the survey questions, the questionnaires. Now, you can't avoid hard questions. And sometimes, particularly in Indian country, you're going to find out that some of the work-related causes of disengagement is resentment toward some of the things that the tribal council might be doing, or that their managers are really weak. To overcome some of that, before you start surveying, you need to find a champion, either a powerful member of the tribal council chairperson, the chairperson of the tribe, someone high up who, in fact, when the survey questions come back and some changes need to be made, they will help you, because chances are excellent that you yourself don't have the power or the authority to effectuate any of the necessary changes. So early on in the process, you need to find a champion, a higher level individual with some real authority, or even authority that's derived from being an elder that everyone respects, to help you in these efforts. All right. Now, you can't control what you don't measure. It is imperative that you actually measure the responses to give yourself an idea of, are things going well? Are they going badly? Things of that nature. I mean, really, how do you know if you don't measure it? Now, that means that we're trying to actually measure intangibles. How do you measure an attitude? Well, as I talked about, you say, are you happy? Yeah, you don't want to ask just a yes, no question, but I am happy in my job. Totally agree, agree, disagree, or slightly agree, slightly disagree, disagree, you know, hate my job, whatever the rating system is. And so that is how we take these things that are hard to measure. I mean, some things are easy to measure. Are they producing 100 widgets an hour at an error rate of no more than 3 errors per 100 widgets? I mean, some things are easy to measure in terms of just raw productivity. But we're trying to talk about engagement, what's going on in their head, what's going on in their heart. And so again, We've got to, ask questions that we can then turn into numbers. So what do? Well, you draft the questions. You assign values, a value of 1, a value of 2, a value of 3. So if they say agree, that will have a numeric value. Wildly agree, that could be a 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. Totally disagree, all right, scale of 1 to 5, then that would be a 1, etc. So then we do the survey, and then you analyze it for the meaning. Everyone, is this time consuming? It is. Really, I mean, it is. But even if there's a lot of sweat, a little money on the front end, etc., to actually produce the surveys, to do the surveys, to analyze it, etc., it will pay dividends for years and years and years. You will end up with a more productive workforce. But look at what else you're doing at the same time. You're ending up with a better set of managers because they are able, through this process of assisting you in HR in putting together the surveys and analyzing the answers and things like that. They begin, even if they won't admit it to you, to your face and what have you, they begin to recognize their own shortcomings, the things they need to do to be better. They understand their direct reports better and how to interact better with them. So even though this is a kind of a lengthy process, so to speak, with a lot of pain points along the way, the reality is you end up not only with more productive and engaged workers, you end up with a better set of managers. You really do. So the pros of surveying is that you gain insight into specific topic areas because you can survey, is the food in the cafeteria good? Love it, hate it, sort of thing. It gives managers, employees ownership in matters of concern to them. For our purposes here today in this work, this presentation, this lunch and learn, is to determine employee satisfaction and engagement. And if we can find where the pain points are, then we can do something about them. And we can measure the magnitude of it. Is it just general grumbling, or are people so angry they are going to leave? They are going to leave, or they're going to become disengaged. And then it could well be that, to satisfy contractual or compliance obligations of one type or another, you might have to do this to find out if you're living up to some sort of contractual obligation as far as, productivity, quality, and what have you. All right. Now, there are cons to this. It's not all, roses and rainbows and all those sorts of things. All right. Um, if you do this badly, you're going to disappoint people. In other words, if you're not going to do anything with the survey results, don't do the survey. It just makes people angry, Well, what good did that do, and so forth. That also doesn't mean that you have to do everything they say, but certainly, you can address things so that maybe they have a better understanding of what's going on. you know, I have found in the years that I've been in, not just a lawyer, but a consultant and a business owner and an executive with various organizations and what have you, and in the military and all that, that a lot of times it's just poor communications as to why someone doesn't understand why they're doing what they're doing or why something can't be done. They're just the labor resources, the financial resources, they're just not available to do some of these things, or they're not available right now. In other words, there's three levels of planning for any organization. There's strategic planning, which is multi-year. There's tactical planning, which is a year or less. And then there's the operational planning, or the goals, if you want, that go on a daily, and weekly basis. And so if people just simply have a better understanding, then they become more engaged because they understand what their role is in the larger picture, so to speak. All right. Now, going back to having a champion on your side, this is going to take some resources. It's going to take money. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to react to the data. But again, I'm recommending to you that you have your 30-second sales pitch put together and really go and show the benefits of it to whoever the decision makers are. Now, there also might be, as far as a downside to this, Rifts could develop between upper management and the supervisory staff if upper management, forces changes onto unwilling supervisors. That is why, hopefully, from the get-go, you have, collaborated with others, meaning, managers, etc. Maybe you had a committee that you formed, a team was formed, and what have you, so that, people all along are really, coming together as far as consensus on what needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen, and they'll be more willing to accept it, even if it means a change on their part. And then managers, frontline managers, they're going to get accused of not caring, etc. Even if it was forced down on them, no, we're not going to change that, we're not going to do this, do that, um, uh, uh, which again is a negative if in fact nothing's going to happen with the survey. All right. There are a lot of ways that you can absolutely fail without any question. Number one, don't plan. Nothing ever failed because it was too well planned. But if there's no planning, sure, yeah. Let's put it this way: failing to plan is the old statement, is planning to fail. All right. If you don't involve the supervisory staff, then again, you're just going to be talking at people, not with them. All right. You do want to involve employee representatives. Now, look, we're not talking about setting up some sort of a labor union, and what have you, but we do want to have, some representative people, from the employee group that participates in all of this. And don't just go to your rock stars. They're your rock stars. They're happy as can be. They're working just fine with whatever the existing status quo is. They're happy as can be. So we want to, talk to the people who really are the ones who simply show up every day and do their jobs. They're not a rock star, but they're also not marginal. They really are solid, day in, day out, consistent and persistent best workers. Now, you also can't be afraid to ask, hard questions. It's like, take this question: my manager consistently provides clear task instructions, and the rating system might be always, often, sometimes, seldom, or never. And once again, from a numeric standpoint, always would be a 5, 4 would often would be a 4, sometimes a 3, and so forth. Well, the thing is, those are hard questions because, again, the managers might not like the answer, but you have to ask them. Otherwise, you're kidding yourself. Now, you do want to make sure that everyone feels that their survey really is confidential in terms of how it's distributed to them and particularly how it's taken back in. I have had several clients that we had terrible outcomes because the managers did the distribution and were in the room, stood around and waited for people to finish the survey, and then the manager collected the surveys in. Well, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be particularly honest. Any middle of the road they'd let me do, like, neutral, not applicable. That's all I would do. Or I would just sit there looking at the ceiling saying, well, I don't even know what this is all about. I'm just not even going to do it. Okay. You also don't want to ask generic questions. Are you happy with your job? That's a yes no thing, which, yes no questions aren't the worst thing in the world, but it's better to say I am happy with my job, and then again, always, sometimes, never, all of those sorts of things. And then again, as I've already said, don't do anything with it once you've actually done it. Now, there are a lot of different survey types. There are annual ones, and involves all employees. Don't do that. I'm not recommending that. If the tribe wants to do that, your entire enterprise wants to do it, hey, rah, 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 that's great. What we want to do in terms of engagement, by the way, the problem with an annual survey is, yes, it shows one year to the next if there's trends and things like that. That's great. The thing is, there are often 60, 100 questions and what have you. You get tired just looking at it even before you even start, trying to answer the darn thing and what have you. And it's a snapshot in time, but it's the time horizon is 12 months long. So I don't know how useful that is in trying to change attitudes and engage people. You can tell from the way I'm saying this, I don't think it's very useful at all. I do believe in annual surveys, but not for the purposes we're talking about here today in terms of employee engagement. Pulse surveys are excellent. These can be done weekly, monthly, quarterly. You can do a whole range of things or a subset. You can put in a new policy. Then, after the policy's been out there for a while, you can do a pulse survey. How did that go? Did you enjoy it? Et cetera. And so you can actually focus in with just 6 questions, 15 questions, something like that on a particular thing. And then there are life cycle ones that are targeted for various moments. When someone has been with you, they're a new hire. After 30 days, you might, survey them. After 6 months, on their anniversary date of being hired, after they've had a promotion, things of that nature. Now, those are the really good ones. And the engagement rate, the response rate for annual surveys really is pretty low. But in other words, on average, statistically, nationally, an employee engagement survey just gets responded 30 to 40% of the time. But when you ask a more narrow set of questions about a more narrow set of topics, 6 questions, 15 questions, whatever it is, then it goes up to a response rate of 85%. Now, the life cycle surveys can be done, at the time of recruiting. How'd you like our onboarding process? Do you feel that the education we're giving you is good? The class you just had, that you liked it, you hated it, all of those kinds of things. So moments in time. Now, to do all of this, to turn things into numbers, we want to gather raw data. Now, that's all about figuring out what the total population of something is. How many people did you hire all of last year? How many people did you hire on average per month? How many people left your employ? How many full-time workers do you have? How many part-time workers do you have? How many independent contractors do you have? How many people do you have in management positions? How many people in management positions are women? How many of them are men? How many in management positions have an advanced degree? How many, et cetera. So we just gather the raw, big time numbers. Then we decide, what do we want to know about those groups? Is my turnover rate higher? All right, higher where I have managers, or higher where I have something else? In my casino, do I have a higher turnover rate of dealers than I do people working in the carpentry shop? What are you interested in? Then in other words, what formulas are you going to use? What formulas are you going to use? And then you apply analytics. What are the numbers telling you? So what the numbers tell you are outputs. I'm sorry, so you've got these raw numbers, the output of the math. Then the inputs are to the managers. And so in formulating the questions and asking yourself, what formulas do I want to use? I want to ask yourself, who cares? Who cares if women are underrepresented in one department, and that's been consistent over the years? Who cares about that? So we want to have questions that go to that. That's the person who wants to know, the person who cares about it, who wants to know about it. What is the rate of this? What's the rate of this other thing? So we want to, aim this at people, the math that we use for people who really care about the outcome. Now, there are normal things that you want to know about. Turnover rates are one of the main ones. And so the numerator subgroups, all right, would be teleworkers, managers, professionals, protected status, race, color, salary levels, all of those kinds of things. Now, a key consideration for what we're talking about here today in terms of employee engagement, all right, and retention, and not that quiet quitting phenomena and all that, is we want to ask ourselves, what is our turnover rate? What's our absenteeism rate? Things like that. Now, nationally, not in Indian country. I don't have the numbers for Indian country, but nationally, the average cost to hire an employee is about $4,000, give or take. And it takes about 40 to 50 days to fill a position. Now think about what's going on during that time period where you're spending that money and trying to find someone. Either work doesn't get done at all, it gets done badly by people who aren't familiar with it, and it could be that even though someone does that particular job okay, they're letting their main job, their primary job, you know, not be as good. They're not doing as well at that as would have if they could devote the full time to it as as they would like to begin with. So it's a bad situation. So if we can retain people, yeah, that's what we want to do. So we ask ourselves, what are we interested in? And here's how you put the formulas together. You want to look at the subset that you're interested in. All right. You want to look at the total of that population. You want to divide the number in the subset by the total population, that you're looking at. That gives you your answer, the quotient of the division. All right. So you've got the numerator, the subset, you've got the denominator, what you're going to divide the thing by, and then the quotient, the answer, is your data. Now, let's apply this, all right? Because I want to make this as clear as I can. In the HR world, as I'm sure many of you know, turnover is generally viewed as movement into and out of the organization. In other words, accessions are additions, separations are obviously people leaving. Now, accessions generally involve new hires. They also, though, and please listen to me on this, they also could include people that are transferring from one department to another. So in essence, they become a new hire in the new department or whatever. All right. But generally, rule of thumb, the world looked at from the 30,000 foot level, accessions generally are new hires. Now, separations, though, you have to get a little more granular. You need to look at it a little more carefully. So you want to look at quits, layoffs, and discharges. Now, I don't want to get all legalistic here. Layoffs are one thing, all right? Furloughs are another. With a furlough, someone's coming back, all right? They're off for a while. Layoff could actually mean we're done. That job is done. And some of you may have already experienced it during the pandemic when it got rocking and rolling along, when COVID showed up, that there was a real legal difference between people applying for unemployment who had been laid off, they lost their jobs, versus the benefits that were available to people that were furloughed. One of the main things there, now I'm not necessarily talking about Indian country now, I'm talking about, again, kind of in general, a furloughed person was able to stay on the company's insurance because they were, because of the short amount of time they're going to be off, et cetera. Whereas someone who lost their job, they couldn't maintain the benefits unless maybe they wanted to pay for the medical benefits themselves, all right, through Cobra and things like that. And then you've got, yeah, you're fired. All right. Now, turnover can also be typed as voluntary or involuntary. And remember, we're talking about subsets. We might want to measure not just the number of people that left us, but how many of those things were voluntary, how many were involuntary. If there's a high number of voluntary ones, wow, what's going on? Are people, leaving us? We're not able to retain them. Okay, let's put some numbers to this. Determining a separation rate, all right? So separation rate is SR. In this example, total terminations during the period is 87 people in my example here. And then the average head count of the employees is 1,754. So the quantity of the subset, all right, is 87. So our numerator is going to be 87, the number on top. Now the denominator is the total of something. And in this example, that is our 1,754. So we do the division and we figure out we have a 5% separation rate. Now let's look at our accession rate. Let me see here. What did I do wrong? One second, everyone. Okay, I miss everyone. One second here. Let me. Okay, I had meant to have a slide that talked about the accession rate. I'm sorry, I didn't include that slide. You would do the same thing for the people that you've added. So let me say that again, because I don't want you to walk away from this confused. What you're looking at in this example is a separation rate, and you see how we put it together. We do the exact same thing for whatever this time period is that we're measuring for the number of additions. Let us say theoretically that it ends up being 9%. So now we know, if we compare those two numbers, that we are gaining more people than we are losing. All right. Is that good or bad? It can be either one. It depends. It could be a good thing if at our casino we have seasonality, or at our ski lodge, or at our restaurants, or whatever other enterprise. If we're ramping up, if it's a seasonal kind of a business, then adding more people, that's good. We need the help. That's a good thing. If, however, nothing has really changed, the throughput rate of work, and what have you is no different, then why are we adding more people? Is it that the people who are here are being less productive, they're not engaged, etc.? So that goes back to the analysis thing. So that I'm going to back up for a moment. All right, I want to back up to one of my earlier slides. Here it is. What we just did, we gathered the raw data, we decided what formula we were going to use, then we applied analytic. The quotient of the division and what have you, we figured out, what those are. We give that information to whoever cares about it, then they can make a decision if in fact changes are needed. Okay, so that's how you turn the metrics into something usable. Now, there is a major metric that is really, really important, and it's called the Employee Net Promoter Score. And it measures the answer to this question. How likely is it that you would recommend working at our enterprise to a friend or a colleague? Everyone, that goes to the very heart of engagement, the very heart of it. If someone says, I wouldn't recommend anyone work here in a million years, I wish I could work somewhere else. So this is a big deal. The formula would be the people who love your place, the people who hate your place, by the total people that responded. For example, generally these things are figured out on a scale of 1 to 10, so that the people who answer that they like the place and all that, they'll be in the 9 to 10 scoring, all right, where they've scored this thing. Passives are the people who really didn't give you an answer. They either left the question blank, or they put not applicable, or they neutral and all that. Then you've got the people who rated it from 0 to 6. All right, those are your detractors. So what you do in the formula is you take the percentage of the promoters minus the detractors. You ignore the passives. So once again, putting some numbers to this, all right, we end up in a theoretical. Let us say that we had 55 people that responded. I'm sorry, we have 55 employees. 47 of them responded. 15 were promoters, 8 were passives, and then we had 24 detractors. Now we do the math, all right? We ignore the passives, all right, like they didn't exist. We are going to use the 47, all right? Even though we had 55 employees, only 47 responded. So of the people that fall into the promoter group and the detractor group, we have 32% minus 51%. So how happy are people? In the negative. This is the red flag warning. All the alarm bells are going off. This is really bad. Obviously, what we want is a positive number, and the higher, the more positive number, the more engaged your people are. Okay. Now, there are various types of survey scales, and in doing your questions, you want to try and make it you zero in as best as you can. For example, Are you happy with your current job? Yes, no. That's a terrible question. It really doesn't give you much information. Let's take uh, uh, the rating scale and change it. Are you happy with your current job? Now we've added sometimes. So we've got yes, no, we've got sometimes. Now we go down to another one. Are you happy with your current job? Yes, no, no comment. No comment is a major negative. Now we could have other gradations in there. You could have other things, but understand that by adding, more choices, you can focus in more solidly on it. All right. How likely do you think it is that you're going to be working here in the same department or enterprise 18 months from now? How likely, if at all, do you think it is that you'll be working for the tribe's government or a tribally owned enterprise 18 months from now? So now our rating is very likely, somewhat likely, not likely at all, or other. So you can have rating scales that are very different. Now, degree of agreement, degree of satisfaction. All right. I'm going to let you look at on your own time. Take a look at the slide because it really shows you a more robust rating scale. A lot of numbers to deal with, though. The more numbers you have, the more math you have to do. But this is an example of the wording you can use to have the numbers be the same. One in this example, 1 through 6. All right, but changing the words. I strongly disagree. I'm extremely dissatisfied. I disagree. I'm dissatisfied. Excuse me. I somewhat disagree. I'm more dissatisfied than satisfied. So you can actually, again, turn intangibles into tangibles with your rating system. Now, I know some of you are saying, where on earth would I find, some of these questions? Well, you can look at, Google, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Everyone, honestly, if you just, put survey question and then, the heading leadership, engagement, whatever, you're going to find, quite a few things available to you. Okay. Now, in terms of moving forward, we've done all of this work and all that. And so what we want to do is, make sure that our managers are kind of in line with what their direct reports are actually feeling. And to that end, I strongly want to urge you, strongly, all right, that the managers take the same survey as the direct reports. However, they put down answers that they think their direct reports would use. In other words, they're not really sharing their own reaction to the question. They're sharing with you what they think their direct reports reactions would be. And you know exactly where I'm going with this. The end result is you find areas of mismatch where the perceptions of the parties are completely different. That identifies problem areas, pain points that can be resolved. To begin to wrap this up, one of the most effective things you can do are have recognition programs. If you ask someone, when was the last time your supervisor gave you a compliment? When was the last time you were recognized? And what have you? Or a better question is, how often are you, praised, etc. You're going to find people are pretty unhappy because they're not recognized. Doesn't mean that you have to, fawn over people, give them false, praise and all that. But statistically, recognition programs, employee of the month, everyone, a shout out to, Ellen, she did this great, whatever and all that. Those are important and they help foster engagement. Now, in terms of this recognition, when did you last receive recognition from management? How often do you receive recognition? Do you feel you receive enough of it? You could take these questions and make a survey out of them if you wanted to. All right. One thing that I think is vital, particularly for the people who've been around for a while, is you need to have managers need to sit down and do an individualized job description review with their direct reports. I'm not just talking about a performance evaluation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a candid conversation of what's in the job description. What does the manager expect? What are their desired outcomes? What do they think the benchmark is of acceptable behavior, et cetera? So it's not so much that they're actually doing an individualized, performance review of someone or a group. What they're doing is finding out, do people even understand what a good job is? Everyone, maybe I'm senile in my old age, but I do believe people want to do a good job. Most people want to do a good job. If management would just tell them what a good job is. Okay. Training, the last thing. In my years of consulting with tribes and nonprofits, it's been obvious to me that there's a lack of effective training for individual jobs throughout Indian country. That there need to be more job aids. There needs to be more visual instruction. You know, people generally, we all learn in three ways and retain information. There are visual learners, there are auditory learners, hearing, and then there are tactile or what are called kinesthetic learners, things that they learn better by doing. And so whenever you're doing training, you want to ask yourself, are my training materials and my exercises and my hands-on, etc., does it as best as we can call out to all of those things? Because everyone, you don't know people, all right, as a collective group. You can't hit all of these things for everybody hard enough to impact each one of them. So you want to have a compilation of these things. Now, if you have a small set of direct reports, let's say you're a manager, there are ways to figure out how best to train that person. If they say, I see what you're saying, versus I hear what you're saying, versus I get it, they're telling you who they are. I see what you mean, visual learner. I hear what you're saying, then that's an auditory learner. And if someone says, I get it, I'm down with that, I can grasp that. Yeah, I really get the meaning of that. That is a tactile kind of a person. Final thing I want to share with you, there's 9 steps to a training process. I'll let you read this for yourself: determining training needs, identifying the needs, etc. Well, everyone, my final thoughts in wrapping this up is you do need to find a champion. It's very good if you can form a committee, all right, to help you. Bring managers into putting the surveys together, and then get approval from the highest authority you possibly can, because this does take a commitment of time, money, and effort. With that, I'm going to leave you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us today, for the energy, for your attention, etc. If I can be of any help to you, your tribe, my email is max@maxmullerassociates.com, and love to hear from you. With that, Janet, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Wonderful, Max. Always a pleasure and love listening to you. I can hear recruitment on and on and on. And thank you once again for your time. We value you. Once again, if you have any questions, Max is available at max@maxmullerassociates.com. Max, thank you so much for today's session, and we look forward to hearing more sessions from you.
Thank you very much. Everyone be well. Bye-bye.